We're starting now the third and final shiur regarding Heter Iska. It's the final, I think. It's final shiur. We're going to start with completing the one Nakuda where we stopped yesterday and the last point, and then we'll continue weiter a few more important points that have to do with Heter Iska. We mentioned what the Alter Rebbe says in Sif Mem Aleph. It's based on the Taz, that you're not allowed to mention a set amount of Iska for a week, for a month, for a year. And he sends you from Sif Mem Aleph to Sif Mem Ches. In Sif Mem Ches, the Alter Rebbe is where it says over there that because a Shaila v'deiraisa is a Shaila v'aroma, so therefore it's a problem. And then Alter Rebbe continues. Then in Sif Mem Aleph, Alter Rebbe continues. He says what happens is, if the end of the term you decide that you're going to at the end of the term of the Iska, you want to continue along the same things, means you made a deal without any specific amount monthly or yearly. It was a deal that the whole Iska is going to be for 2 years, and this is going to be the price of the Iska. This is going to be the amount of the Vachim. And then after 2 years, when the time is supposed to come to pay it back, then you say that I want to continue for longer. The Rebbe says you write a nushtar, and Alter Rebbe says, I feel below ishtar klal, if they agree that they should continue for another year, another half a year, based on the original heter, it's mutter to receive for the next one the same revach like for the first time. And then the Alter Rebbe concludes, I feel with dibri meklal b'seris manarish neyoiser nastam equal derech heter arish. And if you did not negotiate on a new one, you just continued, l'chayra, it relies on the heter rishon, and Alter Rebbe refers to Tas Sifkot and Lamed Aleph. What does Tas Sifkot and Lamed Aleph say? That is in footnote 1 on this page. Someone who wrote Iska, and it says how much it is at the end of the Zman. If it's going to continue, he's going to give more Devachim according to the first one. Taz is talking about that you wrote in the shtar that, and then it continued. It means you wrote in the shtar the option that if it's going to continue along the same terms. Yeah, and then comes the time the person wants Devachim after the date, and the Taz says that Nidabarur the Dinim Anoisim. And he has to give him also from the time after the first Iska ended. And the first heter continues until the time when the receiver decides he no longer wants to be involved, until the one who gives the money does not want to be involved anymore with the Iska. And he says, as long as it continues, the money is still there, even if the time is over. The fact that he's continuing to hold the money goes based on the original thought. But if you notify him, then it becomes a new Isaac. If you don't notify him, it continues according to the old one. If you tell him it's a new one, then but we have a tshuva from the Tzemach Tzedek, which is printed in 2 places. In Siman Kuf Beis, it has the question and the answer, and for some reason it ended up in Siman Reish Tzadik Tes also. In Siman Kuf Beis, it's within another tshuva in Hilchos Nida, and in Siman Reish Tzadik Tes, you have it in your book, but being that in Kuf Beis it is with the question, so I quoted from Kuf Beis. The last question in the tshuva in Siman Kuf Beis, the question was that came Ishtar Choyev, where it says as Api Heter Iska, and in the end it says if it's going to continue after the time where the end of the term is, then you calculate Lefi Erech Al Pi HaIska Hanal, you can calculate according to the previous Iska. And the Rav who asked the question says, Lachatchila, I thought it's Mamish Ribis Gemura. Why? Being that it says over there that at the time of the term, it could continue weiter in accordance with the previous terms. So that means that it's growing from time to time. passes 1 year, that's the end of the term. So you didn't write shana b'shana. You didn't write every year it's going to be a certain set amount. You did it with a different trick. You said the Iska is for 1 month. Supposed to pay me back on a Chodesh Nisan. No, it does it Chodesh Av, pay me back on Chodesh Elul. And then at the start it says, and whatever continues afterwards will continue along the same deal that we had before. So what does that mean? The same thing as writing. As long as you have the money, you're paying me this and this amount every month. Didn't change anything. What difference is there from the first one? From writing, I'm going to do it every month. If I write on the shtar that there's an Iska, I'm giving you $100,000, and every month you will give me $1,000 Iska, as long as you have the money. Or writing to you, I'm giving you $100,000. The term is for 1 month. At the end of the month, you have to give me $1,000. And if you don't give it back to me, it will continue al das of the first one. What does that mean? Translated simply, the same exact thing. As long as you don't give it back, you have to give me $1,000 a month. So, l'chayre thought it was awesome. And even though he did not write those words, he says, but the kavanah in it is as if that's what he wrote. And he brings the raya from Alter Rebbe in Sif Mem Aleph, that if the Iske continues, you have to write a nushtar and everything, but the Alter Rebbe does not say that you could write in the original shtar that if it continues, if you want to keep it going, you keep it going on the same terms. Alter Rebbe says if you keep it, you write a shtar with a specific date, and then if it doesn't end at that specific date, then you could at that point you could write a new shtar, or if you keep the money, we think that you probably agree to continue it. But Alter Rebbe doesn't give you the option of writing in the new shtar that you could write that in the old shtar, that if I keep the money, we'll continue weiter. Because that is obviously the hefech of what it says before. I saw in Tshuvas Sheila. Why is it called Tshuvas Sheila? Because that's Sif Kotten in the Taz. He presents a question, and then he calls it a tshuva. In that Sif Kotten Lamed Aleph. And over there he says that he's matir even to take revach min harevach v'lo motzasi teretz astiras advarim. I can't find an answer to this stira. It means from what Alter Rebbe brings in Sif Mem Aleph that you can't do kitzvah. The Alter Rebbe does not mention you could put in the shtar those deals, and that's based on the Taz. Two, the Taz himself, as if Kotten Lamed Aleph, is a stira, because over there he says if you write in the shtar, you could that the lashon over there says if it says that if it's going to continue, it's going to be fine, then it's not a problem. So it's the chayra stira. The Alter Rebbe says does not call the same Taz. I'm saying it's a stira in the Taz. It's a stira from what the Alter Rebbe calls Meshem the Taz. And by the way, the Alter Rebbe doesn't quote the Taz, but the Alter Rebbe says in Sif Kotten Mem Aleph is from that Taz, from Sif Kotten Lamed Aleph, not from Chof Aleph. Also from Chof Aleph. Sif Kotten Chof Aleph and Sif Kotten Lamed Aleph. There's two Tazes. In Sif Mem Aleph, when Alter Rebbe says Izoyer Shaloi Lahaskir B'shtar Kitzvah B'Shavuos, then when Alter Rebbe says that you could continue weiter, Alter Rebbe's Tzion is Taz Sif Kotten Lamed Aleph. It's both, which means it's from original from Alter Rebbe. So Alter Rebbe quotes both Tazes. He takes from the second one just that line, and he ignores that the Taz is discussing about when the shtar also seems like the Taz is talking about when the shtar was written. That's going to continue. So the Rav is asking at Tzemach Tzedek, Yoireini Heyach Lifsik B'chol Advarim Anal, because the whole list of questions over there in that tshuva, and then the Tzemach Tzedek responds with Be'inyan Shtar Iska. And that is, this paragraph is also in Tshuvas Siman Reish Tzadik Tes. I don't know why I got printed twice, but it is the same one. Yeah. So Tzemach Tzedek answers as follows. He says, because this is a bunch of questions in the same tshuva, says Be'inyan Shtar Iska regarding this Iska, that you says in the Shtar Iska, if you're gonna keep the money for longer, the Iska will continue longer. So Bedinim Shebesoif Sefer Levushei Srod. There's a book called Levushei Srod. In the back of Levushei Srod, he has what he calls Chidushei Dinim L'Yeridei, a bunch of little Chidushei Dinim on certain aspects of Yeridei. On the whole Hilchos Ribis, he has one paragraph. And Chidushei Dinim, and he has a pirush called Levushei Srod around it. And over there he writes V'zeh Lashon. I quoted it because didn't want to print the whole page of it. It says, Mishalov v'mois al heter iske l'zman, le'ach hazman apiron Yisaka v'mois etzev v'gam roitze litin le'isko mizman le'iku v'hu, ra'ashay likach v'ein bo yisur ribis. If it continues, there's no problem with ribis. That's clear. That's according to Alter Rebbe is also fine. If you continue weiter. V'im einoi roitze litin loi v'alo toivo, yeshomrim shekoifen litin loi. If he asks for it, yeshomrim that you have to force him to pay, because we say that the Hiska continues. Because the machlokes fake the dinner, and we're not moitzah from the loiva. For the same reason, fake the dinner, the malva is toifus, being that there's a yeshomrim that he could take it by force, then you can't take it out of him. Now he adds as follows: שגם אם יעבר הזמן פירעון מחויב לתניסק. He says, לכתחילה, go and tell the people that write the heter iskes that they should add it straight up into the shtar. That if it's going to continue, if you're not going to pay at the end of the term of the iske, the terms of the iske will continue weiter. Yeah, and then he brings who's the yeshomim that says that the yeshomim that says that you don't have to be kaifa. He says it's the Maim K'toishim, and he says he doesn't hold of his opinion. He says therefore you have to follow the first Yeshomrim that koifim. However, before it's a suffix, therefore in Mitzin it becomes a Sveika Ladina. Yeah. So the first point that Tzemach Tzedek tells you is the Levushei Srod brings it with Pshitis that not only that if you did it, it's fine. The Chatchila, you got to teach the people who write heter iskes to put it in. It depends. There's a lot of them out there. So then he continues, Mashik Shom Alo Seil Zeh. Then you have a question that from the Alter Rebbe writes, Yichtiv Shtar Acher, and does not mention the option of writing in the original shtar. Yofek even. Yeah, you were right. Take the Nirish Hu Choykech Bezel Hachmer. Seems like the Alter Rebbe Take wants to be machmer that you cannot write in the original shtar this idea. That if it's going to end, you're going to continue weiter. However, b'diavad, I don't think it could be ma'akev. If it was already written in the shtar, you can't pass the whole shtar and say no. You can't continue charging after the term of the isk is over. Why? If you say that according to the Taz, the way the Alter Rebbe frames the Taz, it means that even with the evidence also to have a shtar that says that if you're not going to have if you're not going to pay on time, if you're not going to pay at the time, it continues weiter as iske. It's a stidder from one Taz to the next Taz, which Taka discusses about a shtar which was written. Taz is talking about a shtar that was written. So obviously, Taz is matter b'diavad. If you want to say that the Taz would be oyser, even b'diavad, it's still from the Taz to the Taz. Alter Rebbe is basing himself on these two Tazes. In Sifkot and Memalef, when he brings the second half that you could continue taking afterwards without, he's based on, it clearly writes Taz Sifkot and Lamed Aleph. And in Sifkot and Sif Memches, that Alter Rebbe in Memalef, he sends you to Memches about the Ein Lahaskir Kitzvah, he tells you Taz Sham, which is referring to the Taz about Ribis Derech Knas, which is Sifkot and Chavalef. So if you're going to frame the Taz that way, you have a stira. So therefore, it says, but the evidence, fine. Yeah, whoever quoted the Taz both, and nobody pointed out that there's a stira over here. If you want to explain like that, it's a stira. He quoted the dinner shel Taz, Sifkot and Chof Aleph. Which is what Alter Rebbe writes, Sif Mem Aleph. On the whole, you said of the Taz that you cannot write Kitzvah, Lashonim, the Shach right away in the Kudas HaKesef on that Taz right away is Cholek on him. That's what I explained yesterday. The Shach Bechlal holds, Shach over there holds that the Shach says that Ein Lahaskir Kitzvah that can't apply across the board. You want it applied by Knas, applies by Knas. That's what the Ramah is machmer by Knas, because there's no heter. But in any other place where there is a heter, like over here, because there's like a chomemko, or whatever the heter is, then you could write Kitzvah Lashon. V'siyam shekein aminog. And the Shach says that that's ken aminog. So if so now we have a problem that Alter Rebbe in Sif Memches writes that the issue with it is mitzad harome, and Alter Rebbe says kol heter sheno derech harmo in a moel klum min ha-Torah, a heter which is purely harome is not matter anything with deraisa. V'kach divrei Bechor Shor b'psochim daf chofal v'du deraisa mehani harome, and that's the yisoid of the Bechor Shor in psochim, that whenever it comes to deraisa, harome does not help anything. Hagam, so now he says, Kikishabein, this is, if you see these lines in Tzemach Tzedek, you know that he's about to disagree with Alter Rebbe. The next words, Hagam Kishabein, Kodshe, Kadoshim, Lechuli, Chulin, Govu, Drachei, Midrakeinu. Afal Pikein, Yish Bezeh Mokamion. Still, Yish Tazei Poshet. Sugi de Gitin, Nav Bina Merim, Maise Sheni, Zedei Reise. Vayim Bazeh Besefer Mekoir Chaim, Be'oir Chaim, Simen, Tov, Mem, Ches. Look in Mekoir Chaim, Seif Sifkot, Yud Aleph, Ein Shal. There's a book, Mekoir Chaim and Hilchos Pesach, from, I forgot who wrote it. Slipped my mind now. Mekoir Chaim is a beard in Hilchos Pesach, very long beard. It's divided in, it's the same one who wrote Nesivos HaMishpat, if I'm not mistaken. I think someone also wrote Mekoir Chaim. And over there he has a long, on Siman Tov Chesef Zayin, Biurim Sifkot and Yud Aleph, as long as 2 pages long of a biur. What is he talking about over there? If you sell your animal to a goy together with the chametz that's going to feed the animal. Everybody, whoever has a dog in the house that eats chametz on Pesach, eats chametz b'chlal, and you can't starve the dog for 8 days. He's not going to get full, or he might not be interested in eating kosher Pesach cookies. From a person, an adult who doesn't want to eat kosher Pesach cookies, that's kind of a common dog. That's why in the Kolel could apply to certain Pesach products. So what are you going to do? You have to sell the dog has to eat. So you have to give him food. So there's a trick. You sell the animal with the chametz to the guy. And then whatever the animal is owned by the guy, and the chametz is owned by the guy. So the animal is eating chametz, but the chametz is not yours. And the animal is also not yours. So the animal is not, you're not over Isur Hanoah for the dog eating your chametz. And you're not feeding chametz to the animal. Yeah, and then after Pesach comes and you buy back the animal with whatever chametz is left. And the Tvuas Shiur, which we mentioned over there, the Tvuas Shiur says Asur. And the whole Yesod of the Tvuas Shiur is because it is Haram. And Haram in the Deiraisa doesn't work. So therefore, Tvuas Shiur says, what are you going to do? Mechiras chametz. Mechiras chametz, he says, is the Rabbanon. Why is that? Because the Deiraisa, bittul is enough. Elamai, with the Rabbanon, we don't do bittul. So therefore, Mechiras, the Mechiras are Haram, but only with the Rabbanon, because with the Deiraisa, you do bittul. And it's all battle. You're clear. All you did was you solved the Rabbanon. But feeding the animals chametz on Pesach, means having an animal and feeding it chametz, having enough of chametz, your chametz. And therefore, haram it wouldn't help. And mafkir the chametz, and then every piece of chametz you give the animal, it's not your chametz either. But the animal is in your house, but it's hefker, and the chametz is in your house, but it's hefker. The chametz in your house, you don't see, it's locked up, belongs to a guy, it's in a separate place. Over here, every day, 2 times a day, you open the closet, take out the chametz food, put it in front of the animal, and then what? It's a joke. It's much more varam than having it locked in the closet. It's bittul. Bittul is once it's bittul, yes, you can be mevatel everything. And then you be mevatel, becomes hefker. You feed the animal, you're kainet at that moment. You picked it up and you kainet. from the hefker. So he goes a whole long list in places that mechila does work to be mafkei deraisa, and then he concludes and he says, even according to the Tfuas Shiur, the only issue is to sell the animals with the chametz on Erev Pesach when it's clear that the whole reason you're doing it is because of harame on the issue of Pesach. Does work, yeah. The Mekor Chaim doesn't hold of this sword of the Tfuas Shiur that harame doesn't work with deraisa. It does. The Tzemach Tzedek says that the Alter Rebbe that says that harame doesn't work with deraisa should be based on the Tfuas Shiur. Because you will see that Tfuas Shiur is quoted by the Alter Rebbe more than once, quite often, in places where there's something to quote him. Then, so he ultimately doesn't want to disagree completely with the Tfuas Shiur. He says the Tfuas Shiur is Oyser in a case when you sell it right before Pesach, with the chametz to the guy. But if you rent your animals to a guy before Pesach, then sometime before Pesach, then you could sell the animals on Pesach. And if the guy takes upon himself that he's going to feed the animals chametz on Pesach, you rent the animals to the guy for the purpose of, he masks them to the guy for the purpose of him feeding them on Pesach chametz, and he's meschayev to feed them chametz, so he's doing something for you. He says first you have to be paid to the guy from feeding him chametz, and then the guy doesn't have an obligation to feed him chametz. And that's stam, and that the Chayk Yaakov will be matir, and the fact that it writes a chatchila in the hakel because it's like a haram and it's a derabbanan and it's mutter. That's this long Mekor Chaim. And even over there, where he says when there is a haram over there, he explains how lechatchila shouldn't be done taka, but yeah, but it's fine. So the same yesod could apply here. Yes, lechatchila it's a problem because that's what Alter Rebbe writes. It's haram deraisa, but it doesn't mean it doesn't work if it happened. If it happened, but yeah, but it's fine. Therefore, the Tzemach Tzedek concludes: Hilkoch akopanim bedin im yumshach hazman yumshach ha'Iskeh. Regarding this din question, that if it's going to continue, the Iskeh is going to continue. Also, vada yeshlik v'zbeh b'diavad al-kapon. It's not. No, it's he disagrees with Alter Rebbe. According to the way he explains Alter Rebbe, says b'diavad it wouldn't work. The only way it's going to work with b'diavad is by taking two terutzim. Terutz number one, Alter Rebbe is based on the Taz, and the only way the Tazes are going to match each other is if we say b'diavad, it's fine. And the second reason is you say that because of harame. And we're going to have to take the beard of the Mekor Chaim on the Tfuas Shiur, how in specific cases, not always does haram and not work. And the himself says, the Tzemach Tzedek himself brings the haram and b'deraisa works. Meister Sheni. So b'feiresh Gemara. Good. So it's clear. What? Iskeh? The problem is not extending it. Extending it is mutter. The Alter Rebbe clearly what's extending it is mutter. The problem is to write in the shtar an automatic extension. If you say the whole isk is midrabanan, that any ribis that applies to it is midrabanan because it's derech mekach umamkar or derech shutfus or whatever it is, the whole thing becomes midrabanan, then it's midrabanan. But he said, or you say taka it's deraisa and it's taka harama, but yeah, but this harama works. Means you said that Alter Rebbe is it's asur because harama b'deraisa doesn't work.
Right.
The
explanation of Pesach is that the way we do it.
Yeah, we make it into derabanan.
Only then the Rosh would say.
Right. So we also have to make it somehow into derabanan. The whole iskeh is be'etzim derabanan. Even if the iskeh goes haywire, it's be'etzim derabanan.
You need to make it now.
Because once you define the iskeh as a harame and you knock the whole iskeh onto the side, then it's mamish ribis. It's ribis month by month. So it's a deraisa. It's kotzos. You gave him 100, he gives you back 1,000 every month for it. Okay. So it's awesome. But if you still leave some element of iskeh in it, then it becomes derabanan. That's mutter. Not mutter, but the avid you could be goyve. And mitzvah, yeah. Because it's all based on the Taz. The Taz says you might see b'kfiyah. And that's the Levushei Srot says the first Yeshem was the Taz, and on the second Yeshem you can't be moitzi b'kfiyah. The Levushei Srot writes on the side that the Bechal, this whole swara doesn't make sense. The one that says you can't be koifer and you have to go according to the first opinion.
Why can't we not be able to koifer?
It's a sofek. Well, why not be koifer?
What would be the swara that you can't take it out?
If you did not make such a deal, he doesn't want to give it to him, and he just the loiver said, the one who received the money said, we had a deal. The deal is that I'm making this. The svara is very simple. I took from you $100,000 for business investment. At the end of the term, I'm supposed to give you $10,000 profit because you're supposed to make $20,000 in this business investment. Comes the end of the term. What happens? I owe you $100,000 for the investment, for what you gave. And I owe you $20,000 for profits. The end of the term is the end of the business. At that moment, I become your Baal Choiv for these 120. Nothing more. Business from now, I'm doing for myself. I'm not using your money. I'm not using your 50. I'm not using my 50. I'm not using your 10,000 or 20,000. I'm using my 20,000. Nothing to do with you. We finished the deal. Goodbye. The chiddush is that it continues on the same swara. It continues until we give the money back. And at bestam it continues. That's the chiddush. And the problem is to write it. So for Tzemach Tzedek, it says, "B'diavad you could be." So for sure, l'chatchila you're not allowed to write. L'chatchila to write kitzur l'shavuos against the Alter Rebbe, for sure not. Even though the Tzemach Tzedek says that the shach is b'chol chayil comment. Yeah, that's for sure not. To write that it's going to continue automatically, also not. But b'diavad, you sit as a dayan, and comes in front of you a Torah with such a star, and what are you going to do? So you want to say, I'm a purist. Alter Rebbe says, you're not allowed to do it. Alter Rebbe doesn't give you this trick. So, it's a ribbis. It's a ribbis. I can't give it to you. I can't pass him for such a thing. So, no, but the could be good. Or somebody would just download it, like it happens a lot of times. People go into the internet instead of calling somebody and just search out the risk and then download the first one. And they don't know what it says over there. They don't understand the first. They don't understand what it says in the Heter risk, which we get to soon. They just copy. They say they look like the mechiras chametz. You go to Rav, you make a kid, and you sign your name, and it doesn't work. Yeah, we'll get to some tzedek soon. But if you have to understand, what? What? They make the kinyan without understanding? Sure, I'm sure a lot of people do that. Yeah, but if it says in the shtar, it will continue. But yeah, but it's fine. Okay.
Why? How would they hold the money? Man, the novel's part of the whatever, the nascent part of the money. You should give back.
He has to give it back. Sure, he has to give it back.
So why can you force it out?
Force? No, he can't force him to pay Iske on the months after the term is over. If he kept it an extra 6 months, he can't force him. We're talking about the extra money. Good. Now I'm going to go through 5 or 6 questions on the get to Heter Iskes. Relatively small questions, but each one has. The reason I picked these questions because each 5 out of 6 of them are based on Tzemach Tzedek's, Alter Rebbe, important Yesodis. Each one of these ones are questions that come up. Each one of these ones are things that, if you're going to look in Heter Iskes in Welt, Lav, Dafke, they're going to be makbel on, except for the first one. First question is, who are you giving the money to? Yeah, the first 2 questions. Yeah, but the first question is, who are you giving the money? You have to see who you're giving the money to. You make a Heter Iskes, who's the recipient? Who are you making a deal with? So you have these people that their business is, the company needs $100 million. An investment, a loan, $50 million, a big company. The bank doesn't want to give it because the credit is not that good, for whatever reasons. There's a reason why suddenly a company needs $50 million, for $100 million. So there is ways that you collect this people who collect a group of investors and they make a little bit of profits from whatever these guys make. There's a way that you do lending money. So there's a guy who his job is he gets, let's say the bank needs $50 million. Not the bank, the company needs $50 million. he goes to 10, 15 people, and he tells them, each one of you give $5 million loan. Each one of you is going to be getting 10% on your money return. And then he goes and he gives it to the company at 12%. He gets the spread between 10 and 12, 2%. That's his
times the handling took, or 2 in total?
2% from each one, because he takes $50 million. The company gives this macher 12% on the loan. He takes 2% off, the 2%, and the 10% he has to give to the people who actually give the money. So all he did was he gets that amount of money. Right? So this guy comes to you and tells you, I want to make it, you had the risk of a 10%. Had the risk. Why? Because I'm from, you're from, I'll give it to 10%. And you know where the money's going to, and you know that he's going to lend to a Jewish company because you just, for whatever reason, you ask him, where's it going to? He says, yeah, there's a Jewish company that's making a big investment now, and they need, and you know that that's his business is not heter risk is with the next one. With you, because you're from, he's going to do heter risk. The company love dafka. He's going to find the heter company love dafka because the heter risk is a whole. So,
This version of the company, they're Jewish, they're not.
we spoke about it, we're going to the banks. The whole thing of the corporation. Yeah? Are you allowed to give it to him? So simple answer is, let's look at it this way. If it's a mitzad, let's take the easier one first. Yeah, called the easier problem. The problem is, you have a clear halacha in Shulchan Aruch, Sif Gimel, that you're not allowed to be involved in any way, shape, or form in the transaction of rebis between a Jew and a Jew. Even if you help one, it's also. Shum lifnei iver. No, I'm making a heter. The first we're making a heter. But then he's going to use that money for something else. You're becoming a shutah for them. So the first problem is it's not lifnei iver. And that's if he wouldn't be able to do it without you.
That's considered helping?
Oh yeah, he wouldn't be able to do it without you. If he would be able to.
You go to another person.
For that person to lend it on his own authority is considered helping.
Sure.
You go to another person.
If he goes to another person, it's only Messiah.
No, you get the money. You can get money from another person.
Right, so if you would do it without, it would be awesome to be safe. That's the next words. If you did see you that without you wouldn't have helped, it's awesome to be and if him hoyo nase below, they also be safe. So, whichever way you slice it, it's awesome. Yeah, for sure, we didn't see you. The same Yisod is also Nuchah Shabbos in Hoitzah Mereshus L'Reshus. If a person is sitting inside his house and he's holding something in his hand and the window is open, and he's just holding it, and someone comes, sticks his hand in, pulls it out. So who's over in the Yisur? The person who pulled it out. He stuck his hands into a Reshus, a Yochid, pulled it out into Reshus Harab. So he's over in the Yisur, the Raisa. The one who was holding his hands like this, not over in the Yisur. But not over Yisur Shabbos. But Alter Rebbe writes over there, Osur min ha-toire, mishum shemachshlos, chavere, v'nesin leichefes, leitziyah, mishus harabim, v'oiver, lifnei iver, l'sitem michshel. You're over on the Isra of lifnei iver. But if it's only left in such a way that he could get it without your help, if you're holding it in your hand and you didn't, and he would have been able to, there's a table right next to you, he would have been able to take it without you doing any siyah, that's only awesome to be safe. Yeah, but this is all when you're helping. Over here you have a much bigger problem. Yeah? It's nothing to do with Messiah, nothing to do with Livnei Iver. I just mentioned as a derech hagav. The main problem over here is what's the yesod of heter is? Me and your partners. Me and your partners, that means me and your partners, what are you going to do with this money? You take this money, you lend it to another yid beribis. Every dollar that you make on ribis, half of it goes to me. I'm over every dollar that I take. So you have to be careful who you do heter risk with. So somebody,
The guy is being business.
Chil Shabbos is also selling the Veils of Trefus is also, yeah, that's the whole shiloh with investing in companies. Is that a problem or not? So investing in a big company is a teilim. When investing in a restaurant, there's a person comes to you and says, I want to become a shutaf with a guy in a restaurant. And I had this shiloh, a person wanted to buy a wine store from a guy, with a guy. Become a shutaf, an investor in a wine store, liquor store. I asked him, I said, first, before making a decision, you have to see how much Treif is being sold over there. How much Yain Nesach is being sold there. Stam Yen was being sold over there. Stam Yen was also Bana. And even Stam Yen was also Bana. Went through the Cheshbonis. It's in a neighborhood where the majority of the people there into Hennessy cognac. What's it called? I think it's called. Which is made from wine, and they buy wine. Almost 80% of the sales are from that. They also sell small bottles of vodka, this and that, but the ikr is that, and they also have a lot of remission. That's the two things they make money from. You can understand which kind of neighborhood is in. This is what they sell. Hennessy is the 80% of their profits. There's no way to be mad, unless you become a shutaf with a goy that the goy has more than 80% of the profits. Then you could say we split the profits. That I'm only going to be making money from all the things that are not Hennessy. Huh? No, the 20% of whiskeys or of vodkas. What's the problem? We're shutaf that I'm only. You're the owner of anything that's Hennessy, and I'm the owner of these things. It's a separate discussion. If not, you're a shutaf, you have problems. So you become a shutaf, when you do a heter risk, you have to be careful what you're going into. It's a shutfus. If the heter risk is going to be used for something which is asr, whatever isser it is, I just use the rivers as an example, but whatever isser it is, you have to be careful who you're doing heter risk with. If you're lending money to somebody who's going to be doing an isser with it, if you're not lending, if you're giving, investing in this, you're becoming a shutaf with him. Iska, that's awesome. But that's the first question. You have to know the person who's coming to you with a shaila, he wants to make a heter iska, the first thing he has to understand is you're becoming a partner, whatever way you divide the avachim, 50-50, 90-10, 60-40, whatever it is, you're becoming a partner in his business investment. And if he's going to do something wrong with the money, it's asher al pi halacha, and you know about it, it's on your head to 50%, 60%, and 90%. Or if he wants to do a heter iska kula pikadon, it's 100% on your head. Whichever you chose. Next question is.
And the guy wants to give the I know should I give it or not? Same person.
No, we have to know. And lav dafka, a person comes to you, you have to understand, you have to have a conversation with the person. Do you know where the money is going to? There's no say Rosh Katan. Nobody puts in $100,000 into Rosh Katan.
I have to know what he's doing after. I'm sure he's going to do that.
Do you know anybody that's going to give $100,000 investment to a guy without knowing anything the guy does? What are you going to do? Huh? Voice. Iskas? Voice or iskas?
What's cash advance?
What's something else?
Cash advance the same?
No, it's a different thing. Because I'm thinking of cash advance.
Giving people money for
Cash advance is a whole different deal. I'm not discussing cash advance now. Cash advance is a whole different deal. Why is it different? Because cash advance only takes money when the business makes money. Second question is, what is this guy going to do with the money? Is he investing it in the business? Is he taking it for his own personal needs? Shulchan Aruch in Sif Hey says that Reuven gives Shimon a certain amount of money and he tells him invest in this specific business. Which is like the regular risk, chetzi. And he could tell him, I'm making a condition that he could only do it with this specific business, with specific terms, whatever it is. And if you change from my terms, you take the full achrayus. That's mutter. That's what Shulchan Aruch says. Mutter. Means I could give the money to somebody and say, I'm investing by you $100,000 only on condition you invest in real estate. In Crown Heights, on this block. And if you change it, the whole achrayus is yours. So the guy takes the money, looks, takes about 15 minutes, maybe, to find out that on this block, there's not going to get any real estate. Everything is held, nobody's selling. He wants to change it. He's allowed to change it. That's part of the deal. The deal is, if you change it, you take all the achrayus on you. So the whole achrayus goes on. And the money gets split half and half. Yeah.
Is this trick used?
Is this trick used? Not usually.
Why not? It should be.
Because it has to make sense to a certain degree. It can't be on something that I'm only letting you buy a specific thing. It has to be something which makes sense.
can't say your own home address when you're not going to sell it.
Yeah. The Rama adds that Shimon is lechatchila allowed. The receiver is lechatchila allowed to go and be meshane from the original. He's not considered a gazlan. Because if it's meshane, the first logic is you stole the money. It's a chumra and a kula. You become a gazlan, but then you don't have to give any profits. So the Rama says you mutar l'shan lechatchila, and you're still not a gazlan, and you still have to give the profits. You still have to split the profits. You can't be meshana and then go to Bezdin and say, I was meshana. Deal's up. Any money I made is mine. I'll pay him back his 100,000 and goodbye. Doesn't work like that. But in the end, it's not considered the gazlan. Why? What's the purpose? The task is very simple. Because it means he's going to another business venture. Because what's the whole purpose of me changing it? I'm 50% investor over here, and I'm the one who's doing the work. The only reason I would want to change from what the guy who gave me the money did is for a simple reason, because I want to make more money. Not because I want to make less money. I make more money. So obviously, if at the end of the day there's going to be more money made, so the one that gave me the money is going to be happier. Then it says, but if he made a shinui, and he said that he's doing it for himself, I'm taking the money now for myself. I got 100,000 for Iska, 50 and 50. I go to him and I say, I'm changing it, and now I'm doing the business for myself. And not as a Iska, as I who gazlan. It's considered a gazlan, and what the revach he got from it is only for himself. Yeah, and the Taz of the right away says you have to say it clearly at the time of Shinui. You tell him in the middle of the term, I'm changing, I'm not anymore doing this. I'm doing it for myself. Clearly tells him. At that point, he becomes a gazlan. Until, not when it comes the time. If it comes the time to pay the revachim, he can't show up then and say, hi, I changed it 6 months ago, so your revachim ended 6 months ago. But then he's not believed. But if it's time he says, then it's believed. Yes, the Rama says, therefore, you have to make a condition, milchatchila, in the shta, and the iske, that if the guy is going to take a little bit for himself, for his own use, doesn't make him a shalech yad, the gazlan, doesn't begin that then he becomes a gazlan. Give me Yerusha to take a little bit. And the Rama says in places that are not good, not to be makpid, it's mistamah like the Meitzah Shatnai. Yeah? Yeah, but you have to make a deal like that. The Rabbi Kiva Eger right away asks in the Rama, says that the Rashba does not hold of that. The Rashba holds if you take a little bit out and you still use the rest of the money for the business, you still split it half and half, and you leave it at Sarchi. That's Sif Hey. Sif Lamed, in Shulchan Aruch, it says, Hanois in Mois Chaver Lisasik, Avapisha Chetzi Yesh Leidin Milve. Half of the money that I took for myself as a halvo, and the other half is a pikadon for the purpose of this business deal. He can't use the 50% of the money for himself and then say the rest of the money I'm going to do for the business and give him all the revachim. And the Shach says it's only if you didn't notify him that you're changing it. But if you notify him that you're changing it, then it all becomes. Then he. If he tells him that he's changing it, then he becomes a gazlan, and all the revachim are his. But let's look at what Alter Rebbe does. Alter Rebbe is not so machmir like the Rama. Alter Rebbe comes and says that this Kolel Sifmei Beis Kolel, everything that we discussed about splitting half and half is when the money that he receives, they are the iske, the einoi moitzi oisam mitzi oisam, and you don't use it for your own needs. But if you take and you took more than the half that is a halva, or whatever share of it is a halva, and you use it for your own needs, that means, for example, you got 100,000 and 50,000 of them were supposed to be as halva and 50,000 a pikadon, and he went and he spent $60,000 for his own. and not for a business deal. What is the Yitziyah Serechasik Parnasosoi, Dirosoi, Piroin Chayvoi? Is it living expenses? Is it paying debts? Bein midas hanois and shenos noshus lahoitzi, bein shaloi ben daite. Doesn't make a difference whether the guy gave him permission, didn't give him permission. Even after miyad hechzir mois acheres tachtem yisazik bein v'reviach. Even if right away he took the money out for an hour, 2 hours, and he replenished that amount into the shutfus, he took $60,000 and he put back $10,000. It's over. This shutfus is over, and he made the revach on that is his.
Is that you apply if you mixed up the money in one day?
No, specific. We're talking about specific is going for a specific business investment.
As long as you mix it up.
No, mixing it up. No, if it's the bank account is 100,000, so you should not be doing mixing business and personal bank accounts. If you have a business, a person puts in a certain amount of money, and then you use that money for something which is not for this specific business, you have a big problem.
But if he puts in this personal account,
Or in olden days, there were no personal accounts, so just whatever you had in your bag.
And he used more. He knows that on this business, this investment is discussed. He's supposed to use the 100,000 for this business.
Right.
Deal. And he went, and the first day something came up. A chasana. The next day, takes $60,000 out of the bag, pays them. Just 40,000, takes 60,000 out instead of putting 100,000 to business. Takes 60,000 out. I mean, he took his 50. He took 10. He stole from the other guy. Passes another day, and the mechutin paid his half of the wedding, so he got 30 back. So he put 10 back into the pot. So the 50 of the original one is already cleared, right? It's very back to the way it's supposed to be. So it's still awesome. Then it doesn't count that you replenish the 50 and that person's entitled to half of the revachim like it was until now. No, those 10,000 you put in is your money. So now you're 60-40. The 10,000 you took from him yesterday is the chaganav. So the revach is supposed to be split that way.
what about if it's all in one big bag and you took? Which money
It
did you
depends.
take?
You say it took your money. Took your money. If there's more than 100,000 in the bag, I mean you took your money.
Well, maybe. Let's say it's 100,000.
If it's only 100,000, you can only make this if there's 100,000 in the bag. You can't say it if there's more than that.
No, so it's 50 of yours and 100 of the Iska.
So you spend the first 50 that go out is yours. The next 50 is also your chelik alva. And Al Taleb says him if you give it to him, it's mamash ribis gemura. Even if you didn't make it a determination specific, and you're going to give him at the end half of all the profits, it's still awesome. Yeah? And from this, Al Taleb could say quite clearly that if you didn't spend up to your half, it's still considered fine. Doesn't make you a gazlan. It doesn't make that the business deal is kaput. You can still give. And this is not like the Ramah. It seems more like the Shach. More like Rabbi Kiva, where he brings from the Rashba. That's basically as long as you took from seems like as long as you took up to your half, you're not, or it does not become a gzela, and you can still give the profits 50-50. So what do you do? If you have to take money from the business for a specific short amount of time, you need to take the Hitzibitzioi. So what are you going to do? You need money now. So he says, when you return the money into the investment, you want to make sure that money that goes becomes back the money of the person who invested with you. So you have to if somebody else is going to give the money to a third party and tell them for that person. That is on condition it's on condition that he allows it. If he did not allow it, then it's asr. If he's not allowed, then it doesn't work. It's for the benefit of the noisin to agree to these things, because otherwise, if he's going to say, I don't let you use it, So I become a gazlan by taking the money. By putting it back, I diluted the shares of the original investor. And all I owe him is the 10,000. So it's worth it to give it a shus. Yeah, that is Mevada Yisra Shel Torah She'oiseh B'ma She'mishanim Midayti Sh'naisim Lu B'Shu Moed Yisra B'Shus. It's a separate Yisra of Gzeila. There's two more long seifim in the Alter Rebbe I want to go through. I didn't put them into these papers. Yeah, so now, what happens, this is very important, two seifim in the Alter Rebbe Gimel and Daled. Alter Rebbe says as follows. The person, they make an investment, and I have schoira that is for at least for the half of the investment. I have $50,000 worth of schoira. Yeah, then Rashi loitzion b'yitzioisav midasa noisin ulahaknis lo yaschira kafim ma shehi shova achshav. I am allowed to take $50,000 out of this investment and be makna to him the $50,000 worth of schoira based on the current value. And then give the profit that comes out of these schoira, whether it's a lot or a little. Or if you're going to do with a specific set of revachim that we said before, that if there's you can make a specific amount. Very important line. You don't have to make a kinyan for him with a kinyan sudar. It's enough with giving money. Means he gives him. He doesn't have to when he has to pay him back. He doesn't have to be makna to him. The one who invested the money doesn't have to come and be kind of the schoira with a kinyan soda. It's enough with akna derech mois. For this issue of the rabbanon is mutter and the rabbanon is derech mekach. Same thing applies if he doesn't have any money at all now. He owes him from before. He doesn't have to make a kinyan with kinyan soda. As long as he has the schoira kula be'en. Schoira is right here, so it's not a problem to convert the 50,000 into Iska, into merchandise, and then I'll go and I'll use the merchandise and I'll use the money for myself. Actually, what you can't use that schoira, now you convert it to the schoira, you can't use it for yourself. But what happens if you don't have schoira to cover the 50% of the chetzi pikot, the 50% of the investor? So you have to go and you have to buy the schoira with this money. Or go and be mezakeh to him other money through somebody else. And then you go and you buy the schoira with it. If you were not mezakeh to him, and you went and you used, and you didn't have schoira ben, and you used the money, and you didn't use it to buy the schoira, and then afterwards, and then you didn't, you weren't mezakeh to him afterwards, and the profits that go there are ribis shel Torah, because the money from which you made the business is money that you took for yourself. That money you stole becomes a new achoiv. It's no longer a pikadon. It's no longer an investment. Any money you profited from it, if you're going to give it, it's going to be ribis. Because when he gives him the money, and he tells him, you could go ahead and use it, and he goes and he uses it, and he does not buy schoira, what does that mean? The definition of alva is that I'm getting money that I could use for whatever I feel like. So the 50% that I got as alva, I use for my own. The 50% I got as a pikadon, I got the shus to use it. So I used it. By me using it for myself, those 50%, they also become alva. Because the definition of alva is that I'm able to use it for myself. And then when I go afterwards and I tell you we're making a psik of a machzis schar, it's nothing, it's a joke. All I'm doing is I'm taking ribis from you. And it doesn't make a difference if you take upon yourself all the achrayas, because kabbalas achrayas does not help for ribis shel Torah that we discussed in the previous shiur, that there is such a machlokes if achrayas helps. Yeah, but if he's not, that's if he's nice in the reshus leitziyam, then it becomes alva. But if he's not giving him reshus leitziyam, then it becomes exela. Yeah, but if he's not, he doesn't use it for himself. He says, "Well, ain't nice in the reshus leitziyam, but ain't him etziyam b'tziyah." So, a person receives money, and he does not use it for that. He uses it to take it for a business deal. In such a case, that's when kabbalas achrayus converts the money from a loan to an investment. Because taka became an investment. Achrayus is the person who gave the money. So taka became an investment. If taka became an investment, I'm allowed to have profits. Yeah, that's ikar of Sif Mem Gimel. Then Sif Mem Daled, the Rebbe discusses what you want to do if you want to have what we discussed before. Yeah, you want to have your keren confirmed. Could you make this that you could only use a specific business deal? So it says case of Yasa in the second paragraph of Daled. Yasne imish lo yikne lo schayre blainis. You could only buy the specific products. If you're going to change what I told you, then taka it's a problem. If you change it, then the whole price is yours. And if it's going to be revachim, you do split it half and half. Why is that? Because at that juncture, the shliach, when he changes what the Mishaleach told him, if he benefits, Mishaleach benefits. If he loses, only he loses. And this is not considered haramas ribis because ultimately, even the noisen is still even though the noisen is covered with hefsid, and even when all the achrayas moves on to the first person, it's still, and the achrayas, even though the achrayas was the first person, if you wouldn't change, it would have been half and half achrayas. It's still mutter. Why? Because the shinui is done by the mekabel, not done by the noisen, and being the shinui is done by the mekabel, not by the noisen, he did from his own, and he took upon himself the extra achrayas, has nothing to do with the original deal. So it's not that it doesn't cancel the original deal that they're taka shutfim. And regarding the investment, he's a shliach of the one who gave the money. Regarding the shinu, he's not a shliach of the one that he gave the money. You can make any kind of these conditions. That is what Alter Rebbe says when we give him down. Right. So the first thing is, the kuda is, you have to make sure that when you have a heter iske, the money is not going to pay back loans. The person has to have a way of making money from this money. It can't be that all the money that he takes is going to go towards paying back debt. It'll be a big problem. Yeah, and if he has schayda, then it's enough that he could use to pay for the schayda, and doesn't have to mamish make a kinyan with the schayda, so it pays for the schayda, and that will solve it. Then we have a short tshuva from Tzemach Tzedek, which is on page 157.
A house could be a square.
The house could be a schayda if he's marking it tempar, if this is where the business is going to, yeah.
No, I'm saying technically it's going to that. The money is going to that.
The money is what? Going to a debt connected to the house? And the chayra, yeah, that's an investment. Let's look at the very short tshuva in Tzemach Tzedek, page 157. Siman Reish Ches Tzedek.
If you don't make any money, you get off the hook.
Yeah. If you don't make any money, you're not allowed to make a deal. If you're not going to make any money, you still pay.
in the deal, there was no property, basically that been done.
Yeah. We're going to soon. Simen Resh Ches Tzadik. Tzemach Tzedek is a 5-line simen. Tzemach Tzedek works as follows. Mashanago ha'olam heter pashut. Lilvois beheter iske. Shehaloi v'moitzi amois boitza. Minig is people can go and they do heter iske for their own needs. And Alter Rebbe mefurish leisu. Mokar isu mitshuva shavia beis Yosef. V'koy loiv shnes mekabel chatzi levach ma'ischa. Hilkach, im המקבל היציר לצורכוי, אף על פי שאחר כך נויטל מויס אחרת לעסק בוהן והרוויח, אינוי רשאי ליתן, he's not allowed to give profits from the money. If he went and he took all the money, used it, replenished it, made a business deal, he's not allowed. The heter iske will not work in such a scenario. Clear? Does not work for personal. Now we have a tshuva from the Imri Yosher. Tshuva from the Imri Yosher. I summarize the tshuva for you in Chelik Aleph Siman Kuf Ches. He brings out the Rebbe. Yeah, he's talking about someone who took a halva, made a heter iske to pay a debt, and he makes a heter iske, and the heter iske is worthless, right? And he brings what Alter Rebbe says, that if the person who received had schayra, then he could use the money and give the schayra instead of it. And then he writes something very interesting. Ulai. Keshehanoisen yideya shelekeach hamois l'shalom achoy v'oise imoy heter iske. When the person gave the money, knows that the person who receives the money is only using it for a choiv, but so probably mistame. Well, it's probably because he's relying on the fact that the schayra that this guy has in his house, which is going to be instead of the money that he took off this to pay the debts. Even though he didn't make a specific deal how much the schayra is worth. He says, being that you have to sell it, we saw it in the Holz and Alter Rebbe, you have to sell it based on the current value, and he knows he has to sell it based on the current value. So probably they're relying on the fact that if somebody's taking money for a choiv, he probably has choiv in the house that's worth the amount of money that he's using for the choiv, and probably he's being maknet to the nice, and then b'meil it's mutter. Be'emes nispash, and I skipped a few, but then be'emes nispash t'aminig me'oid, sheloivin al pi heter iska lifrei achoiv v'misham min ha'iska. Ve'ulai samchu al zeh shemistam yesh mekavas choiv beveisei, וההתר הוא הסחיר המקבר וכהן היוסם הנויסם במאויסם ולעניין ריבית מויס כהן כמו שכתוב בשולחן ערוך הנ"ל. Like the Alter Rebbe wrote that you don't have to make an actual kinyan for the schayra, just mois kainis, so probably this is what they rely on. And then the Imri Yosher continues as follows, an interesting twist on this story. If the one who gave the money knows that the whole purpose of this was to pay back the debts, then what happens if the person who receives the money who wants to be potter? Because every heter iske has that element, you want to be potter from paying levachim, you have to take a shvur. So, does he have to take a shvur that there's no levachim? He says, take a shvur that there was nothing in my house at that time. I didn't have any schayra. At the time. B'meil is not shaykh for me to be any levachim. B'meil, all the money that you gave me, whichever way you slice it, I can't. It wasn't the iske. I only took it to pay a chayv. So, and I use it for myself. So it's I only have to pay you the keren. And if you want to tell me that you relied on the fact that I have schayr in my house and therefore it became a iske, take a shvur. Now I didn't have any schayr in my house. And any schayr I bought after, there also wasn't marviach in it.
Here's what he had afterwards.
Because he replenished. If he bought schayra afterwards with this money, then it's part of the schayra. And then he says even less. Maybe it's enough. We shouldn't even do such a shvur. It's enough to make a shvur that he didn't buy anything for the nice and only for himself. And even on a regular iska, you can't pater yourself in such a shvur from paying. Over here, because the guy who gave the money knows that the whole purpose of taking the money was to pay back choivis, and the only way this becomes a heter is based on The only way is because you're relying on the schayre he has in his house. You're taking a big risk. If the guy's going to take a shua that he didn't have any schayre in his house and he didn't get any schayre afterwards, you're not getting anything. It's over. So the Yish is a little bit more mekel than the Alter Rebbe and Tzemach Tzedek. He basically says that they're relying on the schayre, but at the same time, the person who's doing a heter iska, when you're doing a heter iska with somebody, you want to clearly tell the guy, you have to realize what you're getting yourself into. You're giving it to him to money as a loan, as to pay back debts. He could come back and tell you, I never had schayre, I don't have schayre, I used it for myself, it was not an iska, I owe you 0 revachim, I owe you the keren. I didn't lose the keren, but I don't owe you any revachim. Huh? No, because here Yodam Mitchilu. It becomes a full hava.
But you didn't give it all last to the alcohol. So you going against whatever the Balabas gave you money.
The Balabas gave him money, and the Balabas knows that it's going to pay back debts. So Yoshe says probably the one who gave the money was relying on the fact, he didn't discuss it. He relied on the fact that I have schayr in my house. You have schayr in your house. What happens? Your house is empty, there's no schayr. I take a shul. You don't believe my shul. A video camera, there's nothing. My warehouse has been empty for a year, corona. It's been locked. What do you want? The whole year there wasn't a single thing in this room, not a single schayr. The only thing that ran around in my warehouse was mice. That's it. Nothing else. What do you want? So it's over. He loses. Good. So what is the? It's important to understand the yesod of the heter iska. The yesod of the heter iska. We're going to go to the next seif in the Alter Rebbe, which is seif Memhed. The Alter Rebbe does not mention the word heter shtar iska in Shulchan Aruch. Yeah, but he mentions the concept of a heter iska in Shulchan Aruch. What does he say? He says in seif Memhed, in addition to the way that we said in Sif Mem Daled that you could take to make sure that you can in this batuach, that you're going to tell him to invest in a specific thing, and then he goes and he changes it and he takes all the achrayas on himself for the keren. There's another way. What's the other way to do it? Shekibel all of a mekabel shlo yeinemon al shum hefsid ma keren b'shvua kedinu shushem mesocher b'chai shvua hefsid b'oines. First of all, he's mekabel on himself. I cannot, for any hefsedim, I can't do like usual Shem Esach, I take a Shavua and I'm potter. It's not enough. I have to have Shnei Eidim Ksherim that I had a hefsed. Boinus. 2 Eidim Ksherim that the hefsed that I had was boinus. Then, it happens to be the Maram that made it. He said one of the ways to do it is to make it only 2 specific Eidim. The Rav and the Shlech Tzibur have to be the ones that could be made. Otherwise, he's not trusting anybody else. Alter Rebbe doesn't go. He's more machmer than that. He says, no, you can't just choose 2 Eidim. 2 Eidim Ksherim is good. It's good enough. He ought to point to himself from that. You can't prove it with Eidim and those oinus. Pay up the whole thing. So now the keren is batuach. Even though technically speaking, the one who gave the money is rochik from the hefsid, because practically it's be hard to find Eidim. Ultimately, if the guy does find Eidim, it's going to hefsid also like the other one. But you cannot say that you have to bring 2 Eidim and the shvua is not enough to pater yourself from revach. Why? When it comes to revach, it's inherently a suffix. Could be the whole bit of vachim, could be the 1 bit of vachim. And if the 1 bit of vachim, I don't have to give you anything. Can't tell him, I don't believe you unless you bring Eidim. He has to believe him with the shul. Now up to the bad as well. Even if Vitake believes him, it's nothing. Being that he made, even if Vitake believes maybe he made a deal with him that he has to bring Eidim, so every night is Kayim. The Rebbe doesn't apply over here because ultimately the person could bring Eidim, could bring 2 Eidim Ksherim to testify. What does this mean? Very simple. How should the heter iska be structured? On losing the keren, you have to bring Eidim. Yeah, obviously you could, if you want to rely only on the shul, if the noisin wants to rely on the shul, nobody's going to stop him. But you want to make your keren more strong, so you need also Eidim, not only a shul. Yeah, and you could say, I want the keren back as long as Eidim. But on the revach, you can't say Eidim. On the revach, enough of a shul. And then, so how does the heter iska work? I don't want to take a shul, so I pay. So that is point of heter iska. Now we're going to go fourth question that I want to discuss. I have three more short ones. All three are on one page. The previous three were in, previous two were in more pages. One was in 2 pages, now it's 3 in 1 page. Simple. Do you need the heter iska to be b'chsav, or you need it to be, or it's enough when it's balpeh? The Tzemach Tzedek and Tshuva Siman Pei Ches, which is page 149 in the book I gave you. Also a short Tshuva.
People actually write their star.
Shtar heter iskas were written before the Alter Rebbe. Takonas Ma'aram was before the Alter Rebbe. It's mentioned in the Taz and the Shach.
It was written with the
It
star.
says shtar, yeah. In the Taz, the Alter Rebbe also wrote as a shtar. I think there is a letter from the Alter Rebbe regarding Mois Eretz Yisrael. Mittel Rebbe about Iska. Mentions about Iska.
Why not did it be the concept of star?
Could be the Alter Rebbe held that you don't need a shtar. Not to get Tzemach Tzedek in the time. Tzemach Tzedek and Siman Pei Ches is also not such a short shuvah. It's a little bit longer. It's like 1 column long. Longer than the other ones I was quoting today. The Tzemach Tzedek says as follows. He says, Midina and Mokim Lachlik Meksav Yad Lamir Balpeh. First thing is, Be'etzem, whether you're allowed to do, means the question is like it's Nishalti, the Tzemach Tzedek writes, and it seems from the way the Tzemach Tzedek writes it, this was more like a general, like a Michtav Kolel. Because when you start the letter Nishalti, Be'alvois Shalon, or our halvois, Sh'onu Malvim al Heter Iski, Ketik Chazal Palgo Be'agro, Me'akev Daiko Aksive, Sheyichtu Ze Bechsav Be'edem, V'chsim Es Yodom Mekabel, Al Kopanim Echshikiv Mene Be'Heter Iski, Ve'ech She'yisal Eklevach Sachakotzi V'potur Meteres Iski Anal, Oy, in hisnu ba pelavachna is not heter iska nami saga the salakis ribis. General Nishalti, I was asked a general question. Well, today's heter iska is you have to write clearly b'chsimas yodei how the deal works, or about pes enough. So Machzedek starts as the chatchila, medina, talking, making a deal b'alpeh, making a deal b'chsav is the same thing. But he says, first of all, it's a little bit hard to be matir just b'alpeh. Why? Because it's hard to make all the details, to clarify the details, how the iska works and everything else. And b'meila, it's dami tfeila ribis. It looks more like ribis. Then the Tzemach Tzedek says something interesting. He says, be'emes, if the giving of the money would taka be for a full-fledged business deal, then Baal Peh would work. The Rosh and Tzemach Tzedek is v'vad heichah shenoisen be'emes. It's enough with Amir Bilvad. That's what it says at the end. Avol, he said, Mashenkein, he says, Balvois Shalonu, today is Halvois, Shebe'emes hakol yoidim shein miskavnim klal lasik b'shutfus. Everybody knows this is not the real, this is a fraud. These guys, one's a malva, one's a loive. Or the tzaynei litin le'ribis. The place to give my iska. He wants to avoid the iser. He wants to do iska. So he says, "Take, you're mesalik the iser of ribis because lu even balpeh because lu yitzur is going to be a hefsed. You can take a shvua. There's no revlach. You can take a shvua and be potter." Still in all, it looks like haram over here. This is already not too much haram and Baal Peh on something everybody knows that nobody that's really halva that doesn't fly. So therefore, he says you have to have dafka written shtar. And if they don't write, it's a proof that it's a haram. Therefore, Tzemach Tzedek writes, the Tzemach Tzedek concludes the chatchila, vada yesh li zor lichtiv hashtar iska daika ve'ein dai ba'amiro be'almo. B'di'evet tzarich chiyun. The chatchila you must write a shtar iska. Baal Peh doesn't work with chatchila. B'di'evet tzarich chiyun. Then he says like this, if the person receives the iska, Taka understood, you have to be lachkoir, if he understood what he did or not. If he Taka understood what he did for Baal Peh, then it's good. And if he didn't understand, it's not good even if he signed it. So, no, garnish. But if you signed it, we see you probably understood it. But if you didn't sign it, it was suffix. Maybe you understood it, maybe not.
And the worker just not be at the risk of without the style.
You have to explain. The Rebbe Marash, I think, Marash Eidem wrote up here on regular status.
So then was so banks just putting this on status up at the risk.
No, they didn't say just write that. Temporarily, yeah, until you get a normal heteriska. So the Rebbe writes is a letter in the back. You'll see it. The letter that is in page 237, he says, since it's talking about it's not regular halva, so you can just write a pi heteriska temporarily until the Rav will write a proper heteriska. The Rebbe said, until you get a chance for a Rav to provide a proper heteriska, you can write a pi heteriska on top of the loan documents. But it doesn't work like that, the general across the board write a pi heteriska. Today for sure, because then nobody understands it. Now, next point. I have 2 points and finish soon. If it was a regular loan, yeah, a loan supposed to be a year, give you $100,000, no ribis, garnish with garnish. Comes the end of the year, I want to convert it to this. The person says, I don't have money, I invested into a business, I want to invest into the business, I couldn't invest into the business, I want to convert it to risk. So Tzemach Tzedek writes a tiny tshuva on that, small tshuva on the same page, 149. Well, first I want to go through what the Tzemach Tzedek is basing himself on. There's a shach, a sifkat tezvov. He writes near the Mordechai and the Marashal that if a person lends money, Reuven lends money to Shimon for a specific time, regular, and then after the time is over, Reuven tells Shimon, "Yiyu biyotcha lemachzis schar," we're converting it to an iske. Hamisasik chayv ba'insin, k'moshe chayv metchila. The one who is receiving the money is chayiv and oinus, just like he was chayiv milchatchila, the full amount of oinsin, just like when he was a regular loiva. The Shach sent it to Zivkot Memalef, and Zivkot Memalef, the Shach writes that if the money became through oinus, the money disappeared and the loiva is chayiv and oinus. And if he made money, everything really belongs to him, but he's permitted to give levach. And the Chavaz Das says that this only works if it happened for the businesses which were already owned by the person who received the money. And if he made a kinyan sudar, then it works. But if he tells him, I'm going to buy new schayda with the money that we have, then you don't even need a kinyan, and it's enough, because you become the shleich of it. Yeah, it's from Alter Rebbe, it's mashma that you don't need a kinyan for the schayda, that they already exists. Now it comes to Tzemach Tzedek and short Shuvah Siman Peites and writes as follows. The Marashal, who is the source of the Shach, it's mashma that by saying a loan, you do not convert a regular loan into an iska. But if you write something, that does work. Tzemach Tzedek has a question: how does it just writing something could change it? Yeah, obviously we're talking about a case when there is an asik behind it. We're not talking about a case there's no asik at all. With the case that is an asik, could writing enough change it? So he says, from the Chavaz Das, it's mashma that writing is not enough, but you have to make a kinyan for existing schayda. And for new schayda, if you send them, it's good enough because it becomes a shliach. And for Alter Rebbe, it's mashma exactly the opposite on both. You don't need a schayda on existing, you don't need a kinyan on the existing schayda, but to buy new schayda, you can't just say, I'm your shliach, you have to do some kind of zakis mois.
New ceremony after he does
Converted.
the
Yeah. Now that's a short Tzemach Tzedek. Now to me it seems like a Tzemach Tzedek holds that l'chatchila you should write a new shtar because the Tzemach Tzedek starts with that and doesn't undo about the ksiva, you should write a new shtar. If you want to convert the Iske, a halva into an Iske, you have to write a new shtar. And then you could convert it. But that only works when there's an existing business, where the money is an existing business. And you say, well, I'm converting it on this existing business. And it doesn't work to do it Baal Peh. But if he does not have an existing business, and he wants to take this $100,000 loan and convert it into an Iske, it seems to me from the Tzemach Tzedek that it's not going to work. You're going to have to give back the money and take it back to this Iske. And this is also very important. A lot of the Iskes that they're going to be are, you lent money to somebody, he didn't pay you back in time, you have to pay the credit cards, you have to pay this, you have to pay that, you have to make a heter Iske afterwards. So you have to make a transfer of money, or at least give a check for $100,000, and he'll give you a new check with new terms for the Iske. And definitely you can't retroactively charge Iske. That's a full-fledged libis. But going from now and on, yeah. And the last question, this is not from Tzemach Tzedek, this is common sense. When could you start collecting the first payment of Iske? When you buy a house, you have a mortgage, the one payment that's done at the day of closing is prepayment until the first statement. That means if you close your house, you close on your house on the 15th of the Goyish month. At the date of closing, you have to pay the bank for the 15 days until the next bill, until the first mortgage bill comes, or maybe the next month, I don't remember. You have to prepay. The Iske, by definition, is a partnership which generates money. There is no way that you could take Iske on day one, before the person generated any profits. The most you can do is this: I saw it being done. I'm not so sure how glatt it is. I saw it being done, that the shtar says, I don't do it, but I saw it being done, so I'm sure there's a mocker for it. I didn't find the mocker yet. I'm sure it exists. That you write in the shtar that any money that's given from the noisen, from the mekabel, the owner receives the money, before the time the Iske is due, is al cheshbon of the Iske that's going to come, and it's going to get deducted from right.
Even though the Rebbe never happened.
The Rebbe didn't happen yet. They're going to happen. They're going to happen. They're not happening yet. Okay. With this, we're going to end.